226. Is wealth moral? Chalcedon Report number 225, April 1984. Much current writing infers that Jesus and the Bible speak against wealth as immoral. It is true that the parable of the rich man, Luke chapter 16 verses 19 to 31, shows us a rich man in hell and poor Lazarus in heaven, but the condemnation of the unjust rich man comes from rich Abraham in heaven. Again, while Jesus said, "It is easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven," Matthew chapter 19 verse 24, Mark chapter 10 verse 25, the same chapter makes it clear that Jesus meant that no man, rich or poor, can save himself. With men, this is impossible, but with God, all things are possible. Matthew chapter 19 verse 26. In other words, salvation is not a do-it-yourself job for anyone, rich or poor. It is God's work and gift. Many rich men and women were among the saved ones close to Jesus. Luke chapter 8 verses 2 and 3, chapter 19 verses 1 to 9, chapter 23 verses 50 to 53. The Bible condemns fraudulently gained wealth, but declares honest wealth a blessing. First, therefore, honest wealth is to be desired, or a blessing from God. The blessing of the Lord, it maketh rich, that is, materially wealthy, and he addeth no sorrow with it. Proverbs chapter 10 verse 22. The possession of wealth is lawful and is protected in the Ten Commandments by two commandments. Thou shalt not steal, and thou shalt not covet. Exodus chapter 20 verses 15 and 17, Deuteronomy chapter 5 verses 19 and 21. Jesus confirmed this and assumed the lawfulness of wealth as a godly principle. Matthew chapter 25 verses 14 to 30, Luke chapter 16 verses 1 to 8, chapter 19 verses 12 to 27. Jesus made it clear that morally acquired wealth is a blessing from and under God. Seek ye first the kingdom of God, and all these things shall be added unto you. Matthew chapter 6 verses 32 and 33, Luke chapter 12 verses 30 and 31. And there is no wrong in desiring it, if we move in terms of the priority of faith in and obedience to God. Second, wealth is morally good, but it is a subordinate good, a means to a better life, and not an end. It is too uncertain to be the goal of life. Matthew chapter 6 verses 19 and 20, and wealth can coexist with poverty of soul. Luke chapter 12 verses 16 to 21, chapter 14 verses 18 and 19, Matthew chapter 22 verses 6 and 7. Thus, wealth has moral perils when it becomes primary rather than secondary in a man's life. It is not money which is the root of all evil, but the love of money, and the coveting after money with this perverted love is cited as a sin by Paul, 1 Timothy chapter 6 verse 10. Socialists can be as guilty of this love of money as anyone else. Thus, riches, wealth, can be dangerous if men make them the goal of life, if they idolize wealth. The evil, then, is not in wealth as such, but in the hearts of men, and to speak of wealth as immoral is a false logic, an insistence that things are immoral rather than man. But, as Paul wrote Titus, "Unto the pure all things are pure, but unto them that are defiled and unbelieving is nothing pure. But even their mind and conscience is defiled." Titus chapter 1 verse 15. Thus, although immoral men can acquire and misuse wealth, it is their hearts and actions which are immoral, not wealth in itself. In its proper place, therefore, wealth is not only moral, but also blessed, and it can be honestly desired, gained and held, and is a benefit to all of society.